Okay. Kum Lenin Ablat Gemara. We are up to Masechta Rosh Hashana Daf Amud Aleph in the middle of the sugya of Bal Ta'acher. As we're explaining that if the Rosh Hashana, Lir Golim, Pesach is considered the first Yom Tov, because if you promise to bring a korban, you have, according to Rav Shimon, you have 3 Yom Tovim in a particular sequence. Otherwise, you're over Bal Ta'acher. Everyone agrees you're over Bal Ta'acher. The question is only when. We also learned there's a positive mitzvah called Rosh Hashana. When you come there, Haveis Hashana, the next person says you should bring your korbanos with them. So you're over, and I say pretty much the first Yom Tov, but everything else you're over after 3 Yom Tov, according to Tanakama or according to Shimon in a particular order. So we're up to the Gemara now. We'll quote a brayso here, about 10 lines at the top of the page. Tana Rabbanan. Our rabbis learned. It says in the pasuk, Moitzei Sfosecha. It says in the pasuk in Parshat Yisaytei, whatever you utter from your lips, you have to keep and do everything that you promised to Hashem, that you said with your mouth. So we dash in every word in the pasuk. Moitzei Sfosecha, the words of your mouth, is zum mitzvah say. In other words, keep the words that you utter. That already is a positive mitzvah. Then in the next it says tishmar zum mitzvahs loisa. We have a rule whenever it says tishmar is like giving you a negative mitzvah. So if you don't keep your words, it's like a negative mitzvah. Now, the truth of the matter is hishamer is really neutral, depending on what the context is. If it's talking about a positive mitzvah, it should be positive. Talking about negative, it should be negative. But this particular tishmar we say is following a few psukim earlier, which says loisa acher. So tishmar refers back to that. So it's really that you shouldn't delay. So it's a lav. Then the pasuk says that you should do what you promised. Asisa is azhara lebezin. That is asisa also means to compel. This is addressing the bezin shiasucha, that they should compel you to do exactly what you promised. Kasher nadarta, like you promised. Zu neder. That's referring to a neder. You made a vow. La Hashem elekecha, that you promised to Hashem. What's these extra words? Hashem elekecha. These are referring to promises other than just voluntary promises. Elu chatois, you did a sin offering, a Hashem a guilt offering, or an oilis riyah that you have to bring on Yom Tov, or a shlamim, a shalmi chagig, and all of these things the Yom Tov should intercede and should go ahead and force you to bring your kabbanos. Nidava, what is the? And then pasuk says nidava, which means a voluntary offering. Kemashmai. So there's neder and there's a dava. The Gemara on the bottom of the page explain the difference between neder and a dava. Asher dibarta, that you spoke. What is that referring to? Elu koche bedikabayis. That's referring to things that you consecrated for the maintenance of Beis Hamikdash. And then the last word of the pasuk is that you spoke bepicha with your mouth. Zu tzedakah. It's an extra pasuk, so it's saying even a promise of tzedakah as well. That if you promise to give tzedakah, you're over bal ta'acher. We find another pasuk. Taisha brings a pasuk in Yeshaya where it says "Yatzim pi tzedakah came out of my mouth," or just to tzedakah. So we see peace tzedakah. And now we're going to go through every single part of the pasuk to understand why we need. So we're learning now a new source for adhering to your promises, complying to your promises. And there's a lav and there's an asay. And yesterday we learned a completely different pasuk. Yesterday we learned the pasuk where it says "Kisidar nedel Hashem loisa achel l'shalmoi." And there it says the word neder, and we said neder includes also the dava. We have another pasuk im neder in the dava, and then we dash Hashem lekecha. We include all these things. Kidara shidashenu. So the first thing we want to know is why we need 2 separate psukim to teach us there's an asay and there's a law. Amama, you said moitzes zecha, which I say there's a positive mitzvah. You got to keep for what you utter. Lama li. Why do we need it? To tell you the mitzvah say. We learned yesterday. Rabbi told us it says in it says in the pasuk when you come there. Another pasuk says basically should bring with you. So we read another concept of the mitzvah say to keep to your promises. Says the Gemara. And the next question is as well, Tishmar. Then you tell me regarding the negative mitzvah. It says in the pasuk Tishmar you should guard. So mitzvah loisa. Lamali, what I needed for didn't be learned yesterday. Loisa achil l'shalmei nafkas. Clearly it says loisa achil. You shouldn't delay your korban from fulfilling your promises. Then you say, "But you said it says he's compelled." That's azhara lebezin. That's admonishing the bezin. She sucha. They should compel you. The question is, lamali. Why do you even need a pasuk at all to tell us that bezin should force you to fulfill your obligations? Meyakriv oisinafka. There's a meferish pasuk learned from elsewhere. It says in the pasuk. It says in the pasuk, if you bring an oila your korban or a zachar, you should bring it yakriv oisei. you should bring. It says, "Can we bring it?" Yakrib Oisa. Yakrib Oisa is extra melamed. It comes to teach you that you're koifin Oisa, that we actually force you to bring this carbon because it's extra. Yochel Bal Korcha with a forethought, I can force you whether you like it or not. Tamalema, the last word of the pasuk is L'Tzoyne, for his will. How can it be that we compel him and yet he's in agreement? Okay, so how does that work? Koifin Oisa, we coerce him until he realizes the folly of his ways, and he says, "Yes, I want to do." So l'chayda, we already know the concept of forcing from elsewhere. Tosis learns that Yaakov always said that we force you to do a mitzvah is not a din unique in Kabbalah, because in fact we'll have a Gemara that every mitzvah I say we force you, and the expression there is we force someone, we beat them, and put on a pair of tefillin or bench lulav until they die. So it's not a special din in carbon. In fact, so why do we need a pasuk carbon at all? Because as Taisus, it says here, this concept of forcing someone until they say, "Yes, I want to," that we don't have any more service. There it says you just keep on forcing them, and until you basically kill them if they don't do the mitzvah. Here we say we force until they say, "I want to." The Rambam explains basically because every Eid wants to do the right thing. The neshama wants you to do mitzvahs. The problem is that your goof perhaps does not recognize the neshama. And when you force the goof, you put the goof in such a position that suddenly you yourself realize what you're meant to do. So it's not that we're changing you, reforming you. We're actually inviting you to find out your true mission in life. Anyway, the question still remains. So why do we need the psukim we learned yesterday and the psukim we have today? So the Gemara explains as follows. There's two possibilities, two different scenarios, and each one of them needs a psukim chad. One scenario is the Amma, you made promises, well, after she did nothing about it. All it is in the world of words, the world of hyperbole. The chad, and the other scenario is after you actually did something about it, you set it aside, but you didn't yet bring it to the ultimate result. You set aside the animal for the carbon, but you didn't bring it to the base of mikdash. And for each one of these stages, we need to have these psukim that you're over Balta Acheri, you're over Nasei, and we compel you. And if we only knew after you said and you didn't do anything about it, so and you're over Avedis, I would say no. I'm sure you said words, you did nothing. But if you set it aside, even though you didn't bring it, I said that this animal is going to be a carbon. It's a carbon already. I didn't physically bring it to the base of Mikdash. Okay, that's a separate stage, but I fulfilled my words. That's what I would have thought. Slicha, you need to be told, no, even if you fulfill, you set it aside, you have to actually bring it. And the reason why this is actually different, we find by Truma, but we find by a lot of these things that you have two parts to the mitzvah. One is to separate it and one is to give it. And there's always a big argument, are they both parts of the mitzvah, or is one a mitzvah and the other one is just a condition? In other words, let's say by Truma, the main mitzvah of Truma is to separate it from what you have, and then you have to give it to a kohen. But the mitzvah of Truma you already achieved once you separate it. And so on, many Pidyon Ben. Is the mitzvah Pidyon Ben accomplished as soon as you set aside the $5 and then you have to give it to a kohen? Or is it all part of the mitzvah? So we would have thought the Gemara seemed to be saying here that the mitzvah was already accomplished as soon as you set it aside. Now you have a chiyuv to give it, to bring it, deliver it to the mizbeach and all that. But you fulfilled your promise. That's what we would have thought. So that's why it tells you, that you should know that you're over that various if you didn't actually bring it to the mizbeach. The if you only do after that, if you set it aside and you didn't bring it, you're penalized. The kamash the gabe. Over there, I would say, look, you did a half a job. If you said something and you did nothing, we'll say, well, it's only words. Words, people talk is cheap, words are cheap, and maybe nothing happened. But if you set it aside, that means it's not much more than words. So Maisa, then you have to actually bring it to the base of English, and then you get punished, penalized if you didn't. If you need both psukim. Says the Gemara, how can you even say? How can you contemplate that one of these cases is the first case talking about the Amav Lafid? All you did was you said and you didn't set it aside. Remember that we're talking about the Dava. What's the difference in a Dava and a Neder? We're talking about Neder and a Dava. Neder is when you take it upon yourself. The Dava is when you actually have the animal standing in front of you and you say, this is the animal that I'm going to use. In other words, you set it aside. How can you have a case of Amar V'le Afrish? All I did was I said words, but I didn't do anything in the case of Nedava. And the result, the difference is by neder, if the animal dies, you're still responsible to replace it. But by Nedava, if the animal dies, you're not responsible because I pointed to this animal, the animal is no longer here. I don't have to bring another animal. So, but the fact is, we included the dover, and the dover. You said that one of the cases is talking about where he just said the words, he didn't do anything about it. Then how can we include dover? Second, what about the dover? The dover is written with nan. Yet we learned eza who neder. What's the difference in neder? If a guy says hadei I take it upon myself, the eza dover hadei zu. You actually point at an animal. What is the difference between the two? Neder mason if it died, it got stolen chayva because you're responsible. But the dove mason you're not responsible. The animal's no longer here. Omar says, no. The main part, I can show you a case of the dove where you didn't set it aside, and yet you're not responsible for dying, and that's still called the dove. How is that? For example, you said, I take it upon myself to bring an animal, but you say, but I take it upon myself to bring an animal that's here in the house. But if the animal dies, I'm not responsible. That is similar to the double, even though you didn't actually set aside the animal. But because you said, I don't want to take responsibility, it's not neder anymore. That falls under the category in the double. So that's Omar v'loi afish. Omar Mishkach will be fine. Omar, he said, I take upon myself an oile, I'm a nashe, eini chai b'chir, so I'm not responsible. Then the next thing we said, Pichus Tzedakah. Omar Rabba said, Tzedakah m'chai v'altat. Rabba says, Tzedakah, you're liable straight away. My timer. No, you don't have to wait 3 Yom Tovim. If you promise to give tzedakah, you got to basically give it straight away. What's the reason? So what it says, the hakaima aniyah. The reason why by tzedakah you're liable straight away is because the poor person is standing there and they need your money, so therefore you're liable straight away. So there's no pshita. Isn't that obvious? A poor person is standing here, you need tzedakah. Isn't that obvious? You have to give him straight away. Ma'atim, I would have thought. The pasuk of tzedakah is written together with kabbanas, and we learned previously by kabbanas that Tanakama says to the Yom Tovim. So maybe we should equate the kabbanas. It should be the same that it isn't. That only over there when it comes to kabbanas do we relate it back to Yom Tovim. But over here not. The fact is you have poor people. Taish already a few pages ago explains that tzedakah, you have 2 kinds of tzedakah. You have a tzedakah where there's a poor person standing before you. You have tzedakah where you promise to give a donation. And Taish says when tzedakah, you promise to give a donation, there you have Baal Ta'ach. You have the 3 Yom Tovim, whatever laws apply to kabbanas apply to tzedakah. So according to all the different opinions. The Gemara here is talking about when you have a poor person standing before you, it's not a question of donation. The poor person needs tzedakah, then you're over Baal Ta'acher straight away. And the Rajban and others argue with Tosfos, but that's how Tosfos learns. So that's how he reconciles these 2 Gemaras. Amar Rabba says, Rabba, Anudin, Kivon she'ovar olav regel echad. Rabba says that as soon as one Yom Tov went by, oiva ba'asei. You're already oiva ba'asei. By a carbon, we said before, Rameir said, Uvasa Shama, when you come there, Bahaves Shama, bring with you. So the moment the first Yom Tov goes by and you didn't bring a carbon, you're at least over and asay. Even if you hold that you need to go through 3 Yom Tovim before you ever lav, or 3 Yom Tovim sequence, or 2 Yom Tovim, but that's the lav. The asay, you're over straight away. So you want to make a question. It says, "Hey, Yid Rabbi Yeshua Rapapia is Avulat Shlamim." Rabbi Yeshua Rapapia is testified regarding a Shlamim, a female that became pregnant or that had a baby calf inside his womb. She yakriv Shlamim, and you set it aside for a carbon, and then it gave birth. So the baby calf also has to be brought up as a Shlamim. Amar Rapapia says. We had such a calf. We ate the mother in Pesach. When did we eat the vlad? Shlamim b'chag. We ate at chag. And generally, whenever we say chag, it means sukkos. Stam chag is sukkos. Now there's a problem here. You just said that they wouldn't have done it deliberately to be over and abed. Okay, loisa achi not over for 3 Yom Tovim, so they weren't over. But you just said in Asay, you're over after the first Yom Tov. So they were over as soon as Pesach went by. So what happened here? And yet they waited until Sukkot. How does that work out? Says Pesach is not a problem. Why? We learned in the Torah that a carbon you have only on the 8th day. So maybe this calf was born at Pesach. So therefore you had to wait till after Pesach before it was ready and mature to bring as a carbon. Okay, so Pesach they went over. But why did they bring up a Shavuos? But they were over and say deliberately. How's Rabbi going to deal with it? I'm going to read Mashmei Rabbi. You know what we're talking about over here. We know that if an animal is ill, you're not allowed to bring it up as a carbon. So therefore, we're talking about an animal that was temporarily ill in Shavuos. They couldn't bring in the Shavuos. It was not over anything. Sukkot is the first opportunity, so they brought it on Sukkot. So it's not kasha. Ravashi says, what do they mean? Ravashi says that even though generally speaking, Chag means Sukkot, doesn't always mean Sukkot. Maybe Chag of him means actually Shavuos. It definitely doesn't mean Pesach because they use the word Pesach for the mother, but they said we waited for Chag. They meant Shavuos. What they said Chag, they meant Chag Shavuos. Okay. Why didn't the other one answer that as well? Because he says the Gemara doesn't answer because Chag always means Sukkot, because obviously Chag can mean other Yom Tovim as well. But he says very simply, whenever we say Pesach, if we want to talk about Shavuos compared to Pesach, he would always refer to Shavuos as Atzeres, not Stam Chag. So therefore, it must be we're not talking about Shavuos, we're talking about Sukkot. It always refers to Shavuos as Atzeres. Says the Gemara. In fact, it says in Medrash that Shmini Atzeres should have been 49 days after a Pesach, just like Atzeres of Pesach, which is Shavuos, gathers together all the Geluim of Shavuos. But because the Chachamim, the Torah had Rachmanis on the people, that if they have to come back Atzeres a fourth time again, it would be in the middle of the winter, be very difficult. So they brought it very close to Sukkot. Amar Rava says, another din. It's not just a one-off thing. You're over about the acha once you pass the same time, but every single day that you have that you don't bring the carbon with you to Beis Hamikdash, you're over the isa of Baal Ta'ach. Maybe I'll ask you a question. It says in the Braisa, whether we're talking about a b'chor firstborn, but echad kol hakochim or any other carbon. Once a certain time passes your Eiva Batacha and gives you two possibilities. Either Shana, if a year elapses below the Golem, even though the 3 Yom Tovim didn't pass by. And the one is going to be very curious how it's possible for an entire year to pass by, and yet you didn't encounter 3 Yom Tovim. We'll discuss that in more soon. Or the Golem below Shana, 3 Yom Tovim that a year. 3 Yom Tovim that a year is very simple, as we're going to see. At a Pesach, you made your vow, and then after Sukkot, you have 3 Yom Tovim, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, but far less of the year. I mean, that's easy to understand. So, over b'bal ta'ach. Then is either one, whether you 3 Yom Tovim pass by or a year passes by, either one, you're over b'bal ta'ach. That's what the Braisa says. You want to ask a question, what's exactly the question? Rava said that every day after the 3 Yom Tovim, you're over a lav. And you're bringing a Braisa that says that you can be over a lav after 3 Yom Tovim, even though the year didn't elapse, or a year, even though 3 Yom Tovim. What does that have to do with Rava? More explains the question. The one who's asking the question actually is asking a very good question. And what is that? Mechti. The Tana is trying to show you how you get extra lavim that don't think it's only after 3 Yom Tovim, because even in a scenario where you have a year elapses without 3 Yom Tovim, you're also over. So the Tana is trying to increase the number of lavim. So why does the Tana say, by the way, you're also over a lav every single day, post the 3rd Yom Tov? That's what the Tana's aim is, to increase the number of lavin. Should have included that as well. So Gemara says, and that's not a question. Either Tana lemikveh belav kamada. Tana is trying to establish when the lav begins, but he's not going into specifics. How many lavin? Belav, he said, look, he's not have to tell you how many lavin you're over. He's just telling you that the lav kicks in either a year without Yom Tovim or Yom Tovim without a year. Now let's analyze that. Says Gemara Gufa, let's analyze it. Whether we're talking about a b'chor or any other kachim, it's possible for a year to go by without 3 Yom Tovim. You're over, or regarding 3 Yom Tovim, b'lei shana over baltach. You'll be over baltach. Says Gemara, b'ishleimer regarding b'lei shana to have 3 Yom Tovim and a year didn't go by. Mishkach is very simple. It's very easy how that happens. Ela shana. Obviously at a Pesach, and then you have the Yom Tovim, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. Elo Shana below the Golem, a year, but that you didn't have 3 Yom Tovim. How is that possible? To have a year go by, and you didn't go through 3 Yom Tovim. It's Hanichel Mandi is like a siddur, and if you follow Rab Shimon, it says that a 3 Yom Tovim, not just 3 Yom Tovim at random. It has to be in this particular sequence. Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, then we understand. For example, you made your promise 2 days before Shavuos. So a year goes by the following Shavuos. A year went by, but you weren't over the 3 Yom Tovim yet because you need the correct sequence, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. In Mishkach, we find it. Elaman, the less like a sidron, the one whole that you don't need a particular order. Heichid Mishkach. How do you find, as soon as it's every year, if a year goes by, surely you also experience 3 Yom Tovim. Then Gemara continues. If you follow the view of Rebbe, we have a concept called the Batei Archaima, that if you sell your house and you close the walls, we give you a year to redeem it, otherwise you forfeit it forever. And there the pasuk says, Shana Tamima, you have a complete year. So it's not just a Shana, but Shana Tamima. What's a Shana Tamima versus a Shana? So Rebbe says that Shana Tamima means a solar year, 365 days. And then Rebbe says also, where Rashi learns, that any time the Torah says Shana, that's what it means, 365 days. But a Jewish calendar only has 354. So now, according to Rebbe, we can find it very simple. How you can have a year without 3 Yom Tovim. And that is how. Let's say you have a leap year. So a day after Pesach, you made your vow, but you have a leap year. 365 days later will bring you up to, let's say, the Chodesh Nisan, or around there. But you didn't have the third Yom Tov because it's a leap year. Here you have an example of a year but without 3 Yom Tovim. The time you learn Shana Tamima, what's a Shana Tamima? Rebbe says, no, Rebbe holds regardless of whether it is a leap year or not a leap year, a Shana always is 365 days. Rebbe says, like the solar year, and therefore, according to Rebbe, the day after Pesach, and as a leap year, you can have your year go by, 365 days go by, but you didn't have 3 Yom Tovim. And the Chiddush is, the Bride is telling you're already over about Acher, even though you didn't go through yet the third Yom Tov Pesach. Fine. The Chacham say no. If you made something Daled Nisan, then Daled Nisan next year is a year, and if it's a leap year, it doesn't matter. It's Daled Nisan. There has to be the same day on the calendar. And if there's a leap year, then who benefits? The vendor benefits. He has an extra month to be able to redeem his house that he sold. So Mishkachel Rebbe, so according to Rebbe, we can find very simply the Akdash of Basa Chagamatzah, the day after Pesach, you made your vow. The Chimoti, Shili Adar, Basra, when it comes to the leap year, the end of Adar, is Shana Malya, a year went by, 365 days went by, and they're going, but the Yom Tovim hasn't gone by, fine. But the Rabbanon who say that it's on the calendar, how's it ever possible a year to go by and yet you didn't have 3 Yom Tovim? How is it possible? So Gemara says, this is what the big thing is about Shavuos, how Shavuos is unique, and this is all about the dateline as well. Shmaya said, Atzeres, Shavuos. Shavuos has no fixed time on the calendar. It's 50 days from when you started counting the Sfiras HaOmer. But the months of Nisan and Iyar are not fixed. Sometimes they're both full months, so they're both 30-day months. Sometimes they're both, missing months, so Chasser, so therefore they're both 29 days. And sometimes they alternate. Nisan is Molei and Iyar is Chasser. That's how it's today. So today Shavuos always comes out on the 6th and 7th day of Sivan. But in those days it was fluid. Now, if both months are 30 days, then Shavuos will come out on the 5th day of Sivan. If 1 month is full and 1 month is Chasser, then it'll come out on the 6th. And if both are Chasser, it'll come out on the 7th, which means Shavuos has no fixed day. Okay, so how's that work? Shnei Malayim, if Nisan and Iyar are both 30-day months, Chamisha, then Shavuos falls out of 5th. Shnei Chesed, they're both 29 days, then Shavuos will come out on the 7th, and Echad Molech Chasser Shisha. So therefore, how's it work? So you can have a year go by without a Yom Tov. For example, the first year, Shavuos fell out on Hey Sivan. So on Vav Sivan, you made a promise, I'm going to bring a Yom Tov. But next year, Nisan and Iyar are both missing days, so Shavuos comes out on the 7th day of Sivan. So it comes Vav Sivan a year later to the day, but you don't have yet Shavuos. Last year you missed Shavuos, and this year it hasn't happened yet. So here we have an example of a year without 3 Yom Tovim. And this is the whole word why Shavuos is different than all the Yom Tovim because of this thing, and that's why we go through a dateline, irrespective of all of the Yom Tovim, everything else is fixed on the calendar. Because Shavuos is not fixed on the calendar, the only thing that's fixed is the 50 days when you started counting the Omer. It's just that now the calendar works out; it's always fixed. Nisan is Molei and Iyar is Chasser, so Shavuos always comes out on Vav Sivan. But if you're in a situation where you've altered your days, then your Shavuos alters as well. That's the theory behind it. Says the Gemara, you tell me Shmaya said this. Does everybody agree with Shmaya's word or not? Uman Tana the the Rab Shmaya, who argues with Shmaya, Achedimi. Who argues with Shmaya is actually the Achedim. What do you mean Achedim? They hold. They don't believe that the calendars are fluid. We'll learn this in Gemara Sanhedrin. They believe that the calendars are always fixed. 1 month, 6 months is 30 days. 6 months is we know that every month is 29 and a half days and 793 chalakim out of 1080, 3/4 of an hour, 43 minutes, whatever. So basically, 1 month is Malay, 1 month is Chassan, and that therefore straightens each other out. And then at the end of the year, you have a little bit extra, and we worked it out. So that's why Kislev and Cheshvan are a bit more fluid. That sometimes the Malay or Chassan, depending on the cumulative number of hours. So these are Chedim say. They say every year the Yom Tov will fall out 4 days later than the past year. And the reason is because it's fixed. Every month we know which is Malay, which is Chassan, which is Malay, which is Chassan. And on the calendar it moves only 4 days. In other words, Nisan was always fixed to be Malay, Iyar was always fixed to be Chassan, and it can't be Pa'amim, Chamisha, Pa'amim, Shisha, Pa'amim, Shiva. It was always fixed. So the problem is, according to these Achedim, how is it ever possible for a year to go by without having 3 Yom Tovim? And if there's a leap year, then obviously Chamisha. And they would argue with Vizdin, the author of that brisa cannot be according to the Achedim. The brisa that says it's possible for a year to go by without having 3 Yom Tovim must hold like Reb Shmaya and not like the Achedim. Says the Gemara, boy, Rab Zayda asked a question. And so it's clear that the Rebbe Shulnar Paskin is like Shur Shmaya because he quotes this whole Gemara in the beginning of his Shuas. But I've asked an interesting question. Yoidish Mahu Bebalta Acher. The father passed away, made a vow to bring an animal. We know the children are mechuyev to bring their parents' animal. If you hold Shabbat of the rice and an animal already belongs to the base of Midrash, they don't even have a choice in it. And if you hold Shabbat Alav the rice, so we're talking about where the father not only made a promise, but the father actually set aside the animal and consecrated it. So therefore, they have no choice, but they have to bring it up. So the question is, are they liable Balta Acher? So he asked the question, Yoidish, Ma'u Balta Acher. Is the Yoidish also accountable for Balta Acher? It's not his promise, it's the father's promise. He says, what's the shaila? It says in the pasuk, Kiside neder, Amar Achman Torah says, when you make a neder, don't delay. It's as if the person who made the neder shouldn't delay, not the Yoidish. He didn't make the neder. Perhaps it says in the pasuk, when you come there, bring with you all the kabbanas that belong there. These kabbanas, even though it's not yours, your father, they belong in the base of Midrash, and now you're responsible. So you're able to asay. And you are chayiv. So the question is, are you over? You're not over the law, or do we say that you are over? And once you're over that say, then the flip side comes into effect as well, which is the lav as well. And you're over both. Where's the toshma? Come in here, I'll give you an answer. The Tanya Rab Chia says in the pasuk, if you made a promise, do not delay it, because Hashem will demand it me'imach from you. What do you mean from you? So we darshan me'imach prat liyodesh, from you. The Torah is emphasizing you, the one who made the neder, but not the heir. We're not going to hold them liable. Says we learned yesterday behind me. If another show together that this includes leket shikhapeya, poor people. It says in the pasuk on imach, the poor person that's with you, you have to give leket shikhapeya. I tell you that if you made a promise to leket shikhapeya, you're also liable. So we're using imach for a totally different Russia. Behind me, by the way, needs leket shikhapeya. Says you're right. We learned 2 things in the word imach. Why? It didn't have to say me imach. It could have said Hashem will demand it imach with you. And that's like a shikhapeya. Why say me'imach? To teach you 2 things. Could have been imach, could have been me'imach, could have said imach. Now it says umi imach. We learn 2 things from here. So we learn 2 things from here. Actually, we have similar shilas. If a person dies in the middle of Pesach and never sold his chametz and he has alcohol, are the Yoshim now over and do we by Yirah, by Matzah, because they didn't sell the chametz sitting in the house and they shouldn't? No, do we say that a Yodesh is kind of is or not? We also have the Margitin there discussing that as well. So we'll wait till we get there. Says the Gemara, boy, Rab Zayda asked the question, Isha, mahi bebaltacher. If a woman makes a promise to bring a carbon So she also have the Isa Baltacha. By male, it's very clear why you'd have Baltacha. So they have to go to Beis Hamikdash anyway. Rosh Hashana, but Beis Hamikdash. You're going, okay, we're not going to make you bother you to go during the year, but you're going anyway 3 times a year. Take it with you then. And the question is, so, how much tolerance do we have? 1 Yom Tov, 2 Yom Tov, 3 Yom Tov, and so on. But a woman does not have the mitzvah of, it says, Kol Zuchurcha, that only the males have a mitzvah of Alila Regel. Women don't have the mitzvah of Alila Regel. So what happens then? Do they have to go, are they Oiva Baltacha or not? Isha mahi bebalta acher, the eva balta acher not. Mi amrina do we say haloi mechayva b'riyah? She doesn't have the mitzvah of riyah, called schurcha, and therefore they don't have the mitzvah of riyah. Therefore they don't have the isa also of that. Or perhaps there's also a place. There's simcha. Since she has the mitzvah of simcha, shalmei simcha, samach chagecha, so therefore, since simcha, she has to go to Beis Hamikdash anyway. So therefore, she has the Isra Baltach. Amalei Abaye says Abaye, but typically, why don't we learn out the Isra B'Simcha? Why don't we learn out that there is that since she has Simcha, that's good enough? What's the Shiloh? It's Chilriya Simcha. She has to go. She brings the carbon. Says that's what Abaye asked Rab Zayda. Says the Gemara, how can Abaye even ask them? Abaye holds that the woman is not her life responsibility to be a Simcha. It's her husband's chiyuv to make her happy. When it says the Dvar of the Rab Zayda come out, we're asking according to Abaye is saying, I hold she has no mitzvah at all. So therefore, Taki is no baltach. You are the one who's asking the question. You hold the mitzvah simcha. So what's your question? Now Rashi says the mitzvah simcha is that the husband has to buy nice clothes and all that. Tosfos disagrees. Tosfos holds the mitzvah simcha is that in the ain't simcha ela b'basar the times of the Beis Hamikdash, and there's a mitzvah of simcha b'basar. But Abaye holds the mitzvah is not on the wife, the mitzvah on the husband. That the husband has a mitzvah to make sure that his wife is happy. It's interesting that someone else should have a mitzvah about somebody else, and the person who is mitzvah about doesn't really have the mitzvah. Anyways, Gemara there. How do you calculate the year? The moment it's born, you start counting the year. You have a year, otherwise you're able to Remember, we learned before that a you have to bring within the year, even though after the year it's still a kosher animal, but you need to bring it for the year. The year starts when it's born, but Rabbi Yaakov says no. Since you cannot bring it as it's born, you have to wait till the 8th day. The year then starts calculating from the day that it's prepared, from the 8th day. If it's suitable to be a carbon, then the year starts from the 8th day, because that's the time when it could be bring as a carbon. And if an animal is flawed, it has a blemish, anyway you cannot bring as a carbon, then you start counting the year, then to take care of it, give it to Kohen, all that, is from when it's born. You can't even eat it. The if it's a balmum, you say the Kohen can eat it, has within a year to take care of it, how can you eat it straight away? So we say, if we know for a fact, because we know if it's a nafel, the shechita doesn't help. You have to wait 8 days to make sure the animal will live. But if the animal went through the full gestation period, then you can eat the animal even if you shecht it straight away. So therefore, that's what. So we calculate a year for ordinary purposes as soon as it's born. But for carbon, you calculate from 8 days and onwards. Okay, we'll stop here. We'll continue.